I'm here to welcome you to this presentation today. There are two introductory remarks which will be introducing me and my team. Ironically, but I have to introduce them so they know when to start. First is Dean Mary Elizabeth Moore, Dean at the School of Theology, and you have the floor.
I'm really glad you're here. I'm also really glad that this event is taking place, because those of us who've been involved in the Spectrums Project for now more than 2 years have seen the potential in it for making a difference in the way that we engage with one another. And this is the beginning of that difference. So thank you very, very much for being here. Thanks very much to Wesley for being the heart behind this, to Amy for being the feet and the arms of so much of it, and to everyone in this front row and in other parts of the room who've taken major roles. Wesley gave me an opportunity to say just a few words, and I've decided to do it this way. I want to share with you two pictures of words that I have encountered within the last week. And these pictures, I think, reveal something about the value of the Spectrums Project. The first picture that I'm going to share with you comes off of Facebook. This is a Facebook page that I'm involved in, and we've had a couple of series recently of vitriolic exchanges back and forth, and I just want to share with you a little glimpse of a little piece of one of those exchanges. Someone had posted something on Facebook, a biblical text for people to reflect on, and the biblical text dealt with how Christians live. It was a fairly broad-ranging biblical text, and about a day and a half after that was posted, within minutes after that was posted, the discussion turned to sexuality. But about a day and a half later, this is a series that appeared in that Facebook. Person 1 says, in Matthew 25:31-46, the measure of faith was moral behavior, for instance. In Matthew 15, Jesus was very precise about actions that define and where they come from. Later, the same person refers to, Jesus says that these actions proceed from the heart, and he couples sexual sin with murder, theft, false witness, and blasphemy, and goes on to talk about that a little bit more by saying, I wonder why that is. Got it. Because they're all volitional, and I'm emphasizing words that are emphasized in the text, and they are all sin, big capital sin. Someone responds, I'm terribly uncomfortable with the disrespect you two, naming two of the people, are dishing out. You don't know me. You don't know anything about my life or ministry. The judgmentalism is positively frightening. Someone else enters. There's been no judgmentalism and no disrespect, and any claim otherwise is nothing but histrionics. No one has addressed your life or your ministry. The only thing that is spoken to here are post and seriously flawed theology you have posted here. Please stop trying to divert the discussion with emotional appeals and ad hominem attacks. Another person comes into the discussion. You're not in a place to judge my theology based on a handful of posts you've responded to here. And then finally, it's clear that you're not here to have a legitimate argument, but rather to pick a fight. 2.5 days of this. None of the posts were longer than 2 or 3 sentences long. They reveal something about why the Spectrums Project is so important. When people talk to one another about serious questions in sound bites, there is no way we can grasp what the other is saying. And the Spectrums Project is designed to create a kind of discourse that moves beyond sound bites, moves beyond quick evaluation and judgment of another's position, and moves in another direction, which you're going to hear more of later. And the next picture I want to give you is a picture that was shared last week when we had our distinguished alums here. And one of those distinguished alums was Romeo del Rosario, who was born in the Philippines. And this is a picture. He, by the way, has been a missionary in about 5 countries on at least 4 continents, and has had a lifetime of experience in what Dana Robert calls transcultural ministries. But I want to share with you just 2 paragraphs out of his speech here last week. When I was 2 years old, Japanese women, I want you to know that when he was 2 years old, this was just a few years after World War II, when his country, the Philippines, was devastated by Japan. When I was 2 years old, Japanese women visited our local church in Manila and fellowshipped with our Methodist women to express sorrow and grief over the war that took place only a few years before I was born. I learned then that the church seeks reconciliation and healing with enemies. I have a copy of the photo with the Japanese women and my mother and the rest of the Methodist women taken in front of our home church to remind me of that lesson. And indeed, he described how he had returned to that photo hundreds of times in his life because it had become a symbol to him. And let me read you his further words. After years as a pastor serving in Los Angeles and many years of service in different countries as a missionary, I know with deep conviction that barriers can be overcome. Boundaries can be pushed, and walls can be broken between cultures, races, religions, gender and gender orientations, abilities and disabilities, and social and economic backgrounds. Despite all of the accompanying pain, I'm convinced that people's minds can change. Hostility can turn into hospitality. Strangers can become friends, and fear can morph into courage. I have seen this happen. That's what Spectrums is about. Thank you very, very much.
The Spectrums project is a cutting-edge scientific research project, but it began in churches. Before the science took up, it began with the problems of the sort that Mary Elizabeth has just so eloquently and movingly described. So I wanted you to meet one of the ministers that we first worked with, who's worked with us for several years, and who's going to introduce the project from another angle, from the practical point of view of pastoral ministry. Reverend Chapin Garner from Norwell United Church of Christ.
It's really a delight to kind of sit in and listen to this conversation tonight, which I agree is cool.
That's perfect.
I didn't even intend on doing that. That's, really, I didn't. I think this is just a critically important topic and one that is laced with huge opportunity for the church. I am a 1997 graduate of Boston University School of Theology. I am also the pastor of a liberal and evangelical church on the South Shore of Massachusetts. So we do church in the least religious region of the country. And I found that as I was growing up, I was kind of straddling two different kinds of church communities. I grew up in a mainline Protestant church, the First Congregational Church in Fairport, New York, and there was something about the structure of the community that felt like home. You know, and not just the physical structure, but the way we gathered as people and the way we went to church school and the things that we were taught. And even though I wouldn't have said this as a child, there was something about the liturgy and the ritual that just felt solid to me. But at the same time, because my parents weren't pleased that the pastor never talked about Jesus, we also started going to little house churches in the area where people prayed fervently, spoke in tongues. There was prophecy, there was all sorts of things, and a real spirit that knit us together like a family. And I always kind of wondered, is there a way to kind of bring those two things together? And even in my graduate work, you know, I started off here at Boston University, and there's so much that I loved here. The scholarship, phenomenal scholarship, the tradition, and the very progressive social and theological stances. It meant a lot to me, but then when I went on to do some advanced work in preaching, I wanted to go to Gordon Conwell. I worked with Haddon Robinson. I loved the fact that we started our classes and we ended our classes with prayer. And the spirit of the student body there was, they were engaged in faith practices and Bible studies, and it was a very spirited feel. I remember my most fond memory of that time was old Haddon Robinson. We were in a room like this. Old Haddon Robinson was leading the 24 men who were in the preaching program, of course. He said, guys, come on down here. And we came down to the center, and he put his arms around us, and he said, let's sing How Great Thou Art together. And there we were, 24, 25 guys in a room like this singing together. They're just like people of faith. And so I wondered, you know, was there a way to put those experiences, or the best pieces of those experiences together? And thankfully, by the grace of God, you know, I stumbled into a call at the United Church of Christ in Norwell, which termed itself a liberal and evangelical church. And I'm not sure that when we first met up, they were as liberal or as evangelical as I hoped they would be. But we've pushed that envelope further each year, and we are a church that has all the flaws any church has. But we are distinctively Christ-centered and unapologetically so. We gather our life around the living example of Jesus Christ, and we're an open and affirming church. So we really welcome everybody into that relationship, whatever it happens to look like for folks. And I'll tell you, as a place to be, it's remarkable. We have our problems, we have our issues, but we got staunch Republicans holding hands during worship with staunch Democrats, people who will not agree on anything politically, holding hands together and saying the Lord's Prayer together. We have born-again Christians who, if you go to the back of our sanctuary where we have our prayer stations, you might find someone resting their hand on you and whispering prayers in languages you can't understand. We have those folks in our congregation, and then we've got Unitarian Christians who, frankly, aren't convinced they want to buy anything that Jesus was ever selling. And yet we're together, and it's really quite remarkable. I thought about why we are able to stay together, and I think, and Wes and I have talked about this over the years, a lot of it is love. You know, I'm in a very conservative book group and tennis group through the church, and politically I'm in a different ilk than most of those folks, and we were talking, and the guy who runs the group says, you know, I want you to know that we have this burgeoning group of Republicans in your church, and we love it. We love that we feel accepted and welcome. So this blue church is really now a purple church, which is kind of neat. And then, you know, it's just, I think the other thing is theology. I mean, you told me this in my first class here, which I barely got through, I'm sure, but that theology matters, and it does, and the fact that we are a Christ-centered community, and we recognize that we're supposed to invite all of Christ's brothers and sisters into that relationship. People gravitate toward it. There's enough in that to make everybody a little bit uncomfortable. When I first got to the church, people would say, oh, it's so nice to have a pastor that talks about welcoming gay, lesbian, transgendered people into the community, but why is he talking about Jesus Christ, Lord and Savior all the time? And then other people saying, oh, it's so nice to have a pastor that actually talks about Jesus, but why does he keep saying we should accept gay and lesbian folks into the community? So I thought we'd maybe either scare everyone off or people would start coming in droves, and in many ways the latter has happened. The last thing, the way we're able to do this, I think, are projects like these that really give the theological underpinnings for our work. And personally, it happens with a professor like this who commits a good portion of his life to this. And I don't know who introduces you formally. I know most of these folks are probably well aware of your academic credentials, but there's two that I would add. One is mentor, and I should not have chosen theology as my major. I'm not well versed in that, and both of you guys actually know that's true. But I saw in Wes someone who I thought would make me a better pastor. And so I took every course I could take of his, often to my peril, but I took them because I thought you'd position me for a better ministry. And then the other is friend. Boy, my word, to come in as a seminary student and leave with a professor who's a friend. I mean, I can't thank you and the school for that gift, and for you for that gift. All the things you tried to teach me theologically pale in comparison to the friendship and the love that I think we have. So, thank you.
So I'm something like the Master of Ceremonies today, and we've got a couple of other people speaking, but I wanted you to know, roughly speaking, who are we? What's our agenda? You've heard a little bit about our agenda, but you've heard it from a very applied perspective in connection with the church. There are people working on the Spectrums project who don't know anything about the church, who don't know anything about church issues. That's because the sort of research we need to do to be able to pull this off uses techniques that come straight from psychology and neuroscience and evolutionary theory and a bunch of other places. And we've put together a team, very diverse team, from different parts of the country, and you'll find out who we are in the next couple of slides. 5 of these 6 people are here today. 4 of them are sitting right here. And you'll see their names: Catherine Caldwell-Harris from the psychology department, and our 2 postdocs, Amy Radin and Ravi Iyer at the University of Southern California, and Connor Wood and Nick DiDonato, who are doctoral students and learning a lot about all of this material. We have a bunch of people who support us with their advice, and they've been extremely important. Some of these names you'll recognise as extremely famous. John Jost, for example, in political theory and ideology, is a stellar person. And many other people, depending on the field you're in, you'll recognise those people as leading lights, and they've been guiding us along the way. So what are we trying to do? We want to deepen understanding of religious beliefs and behaviours, religion-politics interactions, and religion-personality interactions. And we want to create a scientifically robust questionnaire to measure religious ideology on this left-right spectrum from liberal to conservative. Oddly enough, it doesn't exist yet. We've built it, and we've piloted it, and we've tested it, and we've analysed it, and it's looking good. And it produces fabulous insights. The survey is going to be online for everyone in its finished form in about a month from now. And you'll have the opportunity to take the survey at that website right there when the time comes, so keep your ears out for that. How do you deal with the Spectrums project? This research has some immediate implications for understanding individual differences. People really are different in the church and outside. And some people are very hostile to religion, and other people think that religion is a matter of joy. They're all over the map. We can understand why better after this research than we could before. We can also understand the links between religious ideology and personality, which are terribly important. You're very familiar by now with members of Reverend Fred Phelps' Protesting Baptist Church. We think we can help to increase empathic awareness of religious differences so that people don't have to fight, bang heads against each other in this pointless soundbite kind of way, but they might be able to find ways to slow down and connect. I think we can understand larger social patterns of religious conflict, where you've got pretty much what's safely called, I think, culture wars. Religion is finding itself more and more cornered in those culture wars, and that cartoon illustrates the sense in which that's happening. I think we can improve the training of religious leaders. There's nothing quite like being in a church with a minister like Chapin, and when you talk to him you can tell that he gets you. And he gets you if you're a Republican, and he gets you if you're a Democrat. He gets you if you're a tongue-speaking charismatic, and he gets you if you're a skeptical Unitarian who's not really sure how many gods they are, but he's pretty sure that it's less than one. At most one, as they say in the Pennsylvanian churches. We believe in God, but at most one. We also think we can support radically inclusive religious communities, and that's really what this talk today is about. That's one of the applications we most care about. Why radically inclusive communities? Whatever love means in churches, it should rise above the mere duplication of political and moral ideologies. If love means anything in religious communities, it can't just be a duplication of our existing biases. That would be pointless, and we might as well go bowling. So with that, now I'd like to introduce Amy Radin, who's speaking for 3. And Amy's a postdoc, and she's just an absolute treasure. Amy, take it away.
All right. We just wanted to take a minute to put a little flesh on what we're going to be talking to you about today. And you've heard a little bit about it from Reverend Chapin Garner. I think he describes his journey very aptly. And so I'm not going to be speaking from my academic side at the moment. I'm going to tell you a little bit about how I came to be a part of this project and interested, but more like how I came to be. I was raised in the Southern Baptist Church in the heart of the South in Tennessee, right in Nashville. And I'm seeing your Nashville friend. I was there whenever the church doors were open. But perhaps the best way to maybe explain a little bit about where I come from is in the conflict, the tension that belies these communities. Southern Baptist to the core, and the way you knew that is because we kept our beer in the vegetable drawer at the bottom of the refrigerator. I thought it was just where it was coldest. No, they were solid back in the day. It was where you couldn't see it when your friends came over. Okay, that's how we're going to manage this. These things you find out decades later in your life. That is very much where I came from. I went from there, leaving apparently a bit of a scandal. I didn't realize I wasn't supposed to go to, went to a private university in North Carolina, the dark blue one, in case anybody's wondering, and I didn't know I wasn't supposed to go to Stanford, or that I needed to go to Baylor, or some of these colleges, and apparently my parents had to fend off and defend my decision. This is also something I didn't learn until years later. And so, I grew up in a family that was also open to new ideas. I was eager to learn, expand my horizons. But I was very firmly grounded in evangelical beliefs. That's where I came from. And then comes the decision to come to school of theology. And in that search, of course, I look at Duke Divinity, and I'm getting counsel from some of the Christian fellowship leaders I was a part of there. And Duke Divinity, very good, excellent place, but you just need to be careful. It can get a little liberal at times. I end up at BU, where they talk about those conservatives down at Duke. I'm going, oh no, where am I? What happened? How did I end up here? Wonderfully so. I lived in Theology House. I wonder if there's some Theology House people here. Spent long late nights up until 2 o'clock in the morning. Lived on the 4th floor, so in a little shoebox room with 3 other women living in shoebox rooms. We were quite the eclectic group. We had a Christian Scientist who was looking to be a military chaplain. We had a very liberal, feminist, Methodist, wonderful woman who's still in the community today. And then we had a Pentecostal princess from Africa. And so we were quite the mix, and had long conversations into the morning hours. But a little bit about the where was I, then you come into classes and you bring these personal encounters that you're having. And sometimes you're going to sit in the classroom and you're going to hear things from an authority, from your professors, from people who are teaching you and helping you shape what's going to become part of your future way of thinking. And you're thinking, but that doesn't line up with where I've come from. How do you make sense of what you're learning and where you've come from? There's this tension that starts to develop. So it's not just the tension between Facebook comments and people from 2 different sides. There's also an internal tension that can develop when you do take those steps outside of the places that you've grown up from and where you're growing into. For me, that came when we started to read Nietzsche's Antichrist in New Testament class. Oh, okay. How are we going to make sense of this? But there's something important here to register. So if you're expecting the story where I saw the liberal light and, rejected conservative upbringing, this is not that story. And I think that's one thing that's important about this. This isn't an either or. This isn't saying what you should be or what you shouldn't be. Has my faith evolved and changed as a result of these relationships? Absolutely. But my conservative traditions provided me with a foundation and context for that growth to happen. It provided me a place for those changes to take place and, I think, be sustained. And so that's something you're going to be listening out for today, is what does each side have to offer? There's something to be learned from conservative traditions. There's something to be learned from liberal innovation and forward thinking. So that said, I often do find myself in this state of tension, of being in this in-between space. In spite of my conservative identity, if you ask me, I might say that I'm a conservative. But if I take some of these surveys we've been talking about and that you might hear a little bit about, I probably register more moderate and maybe even liberal on some of them. But there's something about the identity, that foundation, that where I've come from, that still holds true for me. But yet it's not the full picture. It's not all of who I am. So this ideological conversation is often consumed with this liberal conservative split. It's either this or that. And while many are perhaps most people, I think, are much more nuanced and varied and diverse in their beliefs. So it's so important to register those nuances and not just lump people into this either or category. That's what we're about. This isn't just the fault of academia or politics. I think we heard from Reverend Chapman Garner, this is a fault that can be found in our churches. It's a personal struggle for me right now. We've moved to New York City. We've been here for 3 years. We are still trying to find a church where we feel at home, where we feel we can find the kind of combination that we just described for you momentarily. We can find that conservative tradition, something rich, Jesus-centered, Christ-centered, but also open and affirming. And it's not just my struggle. One of the first people that we met when we moved to New York, taking our son to preschool for the first day, we meet a lesbian couple bringing their son, and they are now, well, hot and cold best friends, depends on the day. But I was talking to them about their faith, and one of the women said, you know, I want to go to an open and affirming church, but every time I go, they always call God she. I can't stand that. I mean, it drives her crazy. She's, you know, to her, God is a father figure, and she is very traditional in the way that she, you know, holds her faith. And so she has had a hard time. She's been searching for years, but it's probably been longer than 3. And I think it's such a tragedy that we have this situation. And so this is where the rubber really meets the road, I think, for the people in this room. There is something to be learned here. We have to do better. We have to do more. It's not enough to just say, we're going to be this community, or we're going to be this community. Who is 100% Republican? Even those people, there are things on that ticket you may disagree with, and same for the Democratic side. And theology is no different. There is so much nuance to be captured, and there's got to be something more. So that's what we would like to offer to you today, is where we're headed with this instrument we're developing, the research that we're working, is a way to register those nuances, and then we're going to be talking about understanding-based empathy, how to actually make use of those nuances, how to take it the next step and have a growing community where we can actually be together.